Split the Party. I'm your host, Steve Osbun. You guys know Spencer Brandt. We are here today. We're talking about the controversy around the recent Batgirl cover and also just censorship in comics in general. So if you're not familiar, it's Batgirl 41.
Batgirl
correct?
41 coming out in June.
Yep, the variant cover that they were intending shows Batgirl with Joker behind him. He's got the costume that he wears in The Killing Joke. He's got one arm around her and is making a Joker smile across her face in what appears to be blood. Yeah, and she looks mortified. There's been a lot of uproar about this. People on both sides of the argument. It's censorship. And it should be fine. Let it go through. No, we don't want to see this. This is wrong. You shouldn't be running this. And so ultimately, the creative team, the artist actually did ask them to pull the title or pull the variant cover, and they are pulling it. I feel that this is a responsible use of censorship. It caused a problem among the populace, and so to solve that problem, they pulled it. It was the responsible thing to do. Running this title could potentially have caused a problem. They should have foreseen that, and whether or not they did, it did cause a problem, and they needed to pull it.
And I hate to admit it, but I do have to agree with you from a certain aspect. Rafael Albuquerque, the artist for the variant cover, understandably asked to pull it because of threats of violence from not towards anybody at DC, but from fans on both sides of the
from some of their stupid fans towards some of their not so stupid fans. Some people wanted to make threats against people, and
that's my problem with it. Is how people view it. It's artistic freedom. He drew it as a tribute to one of the best comics ever written. It's not just my opinion. It's a lot of people's opinion. It's one of the best-selling
The Killing Joke is
comics.
amazing.
Exactly.
I own it. I love it.
Yeah, and it's amazing because of each character's story arc through it, regardless of Barbara going through such a horrible trauma, which everyone knows is a horrible trauma. Technically, it's not, how do we phrase this? According to Alan Moore, the original writer, he never viewed it as sexually assaulting her.
Yeah, he has said that she was not sexually assaulted before the pictures were taken and sent to Commissioner Gordon, which I understand. The other side of that is whether or not it actually was his intention, because not everything was shown. The public psyche can spin that however they want, and that has generally become the accepted belief, is that she was actually raped during. Even though he has said that he hasn't, that has become the generally accepted opinion, is that she was. Which is why that makes this such an evocative picture. Fair
enough. But if he himself has said this, and then Albuquerque himself has said this is a tribute to this, it's artistic. It's not. We're not looking at this cover, and he didn't draw this to be like, I'm drawing this so that Barbara Gordon looks like something. Is just like, oh my God, this like he didn't draw this so that the next stage, like the next photo, if you're looking at a comic, the next panel, he didn't draw that to make it seem like the next panel, the Killing Joke was happening all over again. He drew it as a tribute, as an artistic freedom to something beautiful. But what happens next is what I want to get at. Is everyone just immediately assumes that what happens next is going to be the worst possible situation, the bad.
Because it did. She was shot and brutalized. Then she was stripped naked and had pictures of her sent to her father. It did happen. That is a fact.
What happened. But what happened to her, as horrible as it was, she overcame it. And that's a huge reason we read comic books, is to see the characters we love overcome adversity for any means.
And she became Oracle. Oracle is amazing. We've talked about this. I love Oracle. I understand that. The issue is not that she overcame that. That's fantastic. But the issue is that they're telling a story in the comics. And I'm sure in the comics she probably is triumphant and a woman empowered. But they tell a different story with the covers. Not everyone reads these comics, but everyone has access to the covers. They're all over the internet. You can see them just walking through the store. And so whether or not the artists want to accept this responsibility, when they're creating a cover for a comic, they are telling a story with that comic in a brief snapshot. And that is the story that they chose to tell to a readership that largely made up of young, like mid-teenage girls. This is the snapshot that they send, is a picture of a girl who, according to our memory of the situation and what happened, was shortly after this brutalized and had naked pictures of her sent to her father. That's the one that they chose. That's the story that they chose to tell with this.
But even that's not entirely true, because that's not a pose from The Killing Joke. Yes,
I realize
he
that.
is in
It
an
is not a
outfit.
pose from it.
The outfit itself is a throwback to that, but the pose, everything about that is completely different. It's not anything we've seen before.
But there's
So
no
everyone-
way you can argue that this is obviously, this is him standing triumphant over, or standing empowered over a woman who is
But
horrified.
we mentioned the other comic coming out, Batgirl Endgame #1.
Now that one I love. That cover I love.
Yeah, and it's a great cover. It shows her standing triumphant, getting ready to fight. She's smearing, wiping blood off her face, but she has the same exact
But
mark.
this is the woman that you're talking about. On Batgirl Endgame, that's the Barbara Gordon that you're talking about, the one who has overcome it. The one that we see on the other cover, that is
everyone
the girl
assumes that
from The
she's-
Killing Joke, because that is who you are seeing a snapshot of. Whether it's true or not,
No.
that's what you're seeing. But on Endgame, you're seeing that girl triumphant who overcame it, who
But
got out of that
everyone,
wheelchair.
like I literally just said, everyone assumes the worst. How do you know Endgame? The cover, literally, it's comic books, panel for panel for panel. How do you know that the Batgirl 41, the next panel, the next page, if you just actually take a moment to literally not judge a book by its cover, how do you know the Endgame isn't her turning around and just decking the Joker, becoming triumphant, going against the odds, whatever you want to call it?
You don't unless you buy the comic. And in order to buy the comic, you've got to look at that cover and think that that's something you want to spend your money on.
Understandable, but you don't, well, literally, why are people just judging it that bad? I can't understand why somebody, the Christopher Nolan quote for the Dark Knight trilogy, why do we fall to pick ourselves back up? She fell, she came back, but everyone looks
Which
at this
is why
cover
I
and
love
assumes she's
Endgame
going
so
to
much.
fall.
It's because she fell. Last time we saw Barbara Gordon in that pose, she fell, and fell horribly because of that man, because of the Joker in that costume. It's the story that they chose to tell. I can understand the artistic censorship. I don't agree with it all the time, but in this particular instance, it was the right and responsible call to make. Unfortunately, we are running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to let you go ahead and give us your final feelings on this.
I completely understand with Albuquerque's decision to pull it, because in the world of comic books, we love comic books. We can sit here and talk comic books for
absolutely.
the next.
We'll spend the rest of the
Yeah,
night doing it after
exactly.
we're done shooting.
We love it, and even if we disagree on anything in any comic anywhere, no matter how heated we get, nothing should ever come to violence over something like this.
I agree.
Art should never lead to violence, and to me, it should never be censored in a way like that, because it's so hard to explain, because there's always a double side. Something that somebody enjoys, someone will always be offended by it. Personally, I'm sad to see the comic go, because I would have loved to get that, put it next to my copy of Killing Joke, and just keep rooting for Batgirl to just keep kicking ass. So,
I understand your opinion, but obviously we disagree on the censorship issue. But I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dual Bus Design, Excelsior Games and Comics, and Sound G Entertainment. I'll see you out there in the Nerdverse.